Thank you for joining us again on another episode of The Commend Journey. I'm your host, Michael Diamond. I am happy to have with us a fresh guest for this episode. And as is tradition on The Commend Journey, I'm going to let the guest introduce themselves and tell us a little bit more about themselves.
Thanks, Michael. My name is Aaron Bunting. I am a area sales manager for Johnson Controls Security Solutions. I work in the Philadelphia region, and I've been with the company for about 15 years.
Great. What we'd like to do at the top of the show is sort of peel back the onion layer a little bit. What do you as an area sales manager do? What is your governing mission?
In my current role, I oversee a team of regional sellers that work with a lot of enterprise level customers. So we're talking universities, health systems, any different target that you're looking at where security is an investment in the stakeholders of those facilities. So it's a strategic goal for them. So that's our main focal point is, we're not necessarily working with the smaller, in and out shops per se, like the traditional mom and pop level shop. We're looking at places where, strategic security is a value add to the facilities.
Yeah, excellent. So I was just mentioning before we started recording, but I was mentioning to you that I saw on the tagline on your email that sort of one of the focuses is an advanced security solutions. So tell the audience, if they're not available or if they're not familiar already, what JCI considers an advanced security solution.
Right. So from an advanced security solution, we kind of look at our specialized team. We've been acquired through acquisition over years and years, but the team in and of itself, the core team, has remained the same, and it is an individual selling unit that consists of both an operational and a sales team where we are glued to the hip of our customers. So we're looking at designing solutions, working with them for, hey, what solution will work best for you? We're not product centric, we're customer centric. So in the areas where we need to focus our efforts on making our customers happy and making them safe, we'll go through the high-end level security issues of it. So we're looking at, deployments of cameras, access control systems, IP intercom systems, all your traditional access control and security devices, but on a much, much larger scale.
So when you work with those customers, what do you find is sort of the largest challenge from a technical aspect? Is it a situation where education becomes critical so that way they get a better understanding of why they need those solutions? Or is it a functionality and that's teaching them actually how to use the equipment on their level if it's outside of a SOC or a GSOC or something like that where they have staff to take care of it?
Right. I think with any level of technology to that point is if you've got high-end users who are intimately familiar with when you scale it out across an enterprise level platform. You're dealing sometimes with security guards, you're dealing with transitional staff, different folks who aren't familiar with the technologies or don't necessarily have access to it, but need that ground level understanding of it. This is what I need to do to make it work. So part of that struggle, if it is a struggle per se, is just the different level of experience with the end users that are actually using the applications. So when you start to, break it out is who do I tailor my audience to, knowing that, I have to hit all ends of the spectrum.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. And as we know in the security industry, and especially in really any industry that sits on the edge of technology and its advancements, is that is a moving ball, right? It never stops. It never ceases. It is always doing something, going somewhere. And so the innovation and then thus our reactions to those innovations in the security world become pretty paramount. So if we were to speak to somebody out as an end user, if you were to speak to them and say, listen, I really need you to get this sort of perspective on the solution we have for you. Let's take, for example, say a camera solution. What is the thing that they need to ground themselves in first and understand when we talk about those solutions?
I think the biggest piece to that would be just understanding that, a solution is not just a camera. It's the system that it ties back to, the operational component that goes with it, the analytic packages. So understanding all the nuances of that's not just a camera hanging on the wall. There's a lot of other feature sets that are behind it. When you look at what you can and can't do with it, right? Are you recording on motion? Are you recording with analytic packages? Are you activating a microphone? All the different use cases that you can use it for out of the traditional, hey, I can see a camera on a monitor somewhere. Is there a return on a business investment to say, hey, look, because we have these cameras, I can run these metrics to say this camera is being used as it should be, or maybe we should look at relocating, getting better views and stuff like that out of it. So just kind of looking at things outside the box when it comes to a basic camera installation, is that there's more to it than just that.
Yeah, I think it's the big realization that we have picked up I would just say on the inside core of the industry, right? We understand those concepts. It's really important for people to understand, end users to understand too, that it's not just equipment. It's all the things that that equipment can also give us, and we can leverage for our customers that they might not be aware of. That's an excellent answer. So, for those customers, what is it about, say, enterprise level customers that when they come to you, what do they ask about? What are their concerns? What are their pain points that you're addressing in today's environment?
I think probably the same things that most integrators or anybody in the security industry would have to deal with. So when you look at the volume of product levels that are out there, there's so many solutions that promise X. It's knowing how to separate the wheat from the chaff. Will this actually do it? This is my problem. What is the best solution? And being able to kind of decipher through, hey, based off of what you've told me, I think this is the route that you should go. Setting up demos, doing a proof of concept, those kind of conditions that are out there, just saying, hey, let's try something, because there are a million solutions that are out there, and trying to keep up with the industry trends. I think COVID showed us a lot where nobody was looking at thermal detection until that happened. So being able to be nimble and be quick, is a big part of that, but also making sure that you're hitting their budgets, their timelines, and their constraints. There's a lot of other, depending where you're working, between a health system versus a school system, there's different applications that can and can't work just based off the environment itself. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the biggest lessons that we learned during the start and then the sort of the heavier period of COVID was most customers are not aware of how tenuous our shipping industry can be. And when those industries get stressed when it comes to getting product, and even from the manufacturer side, you, as a manufacturer, you can only keep up with so much demand. And I would just say most manufacturers, respectfully, were not prepared for what demands COVID put on them. We learned a lot of really great lessons, and I think a lot of manufacturers, like Commend as well, have been able to adjust as necessary to their customers' needs. But there was a while there when the 10 to 12 week and sometimes 3 to 6 month wait time was a huge thing.
Right. And it's especially when you look at it from a retroactive versus a proactive market, it's very hard to be proactive in a situation that hasn't presented itself yet.
Absolutely. Okay. I'd like to see if you can think of perhaps a recent project where you've been presented, or JCI has been presented with a challenge, right? That they didn't see coming, much like the COVID situation, but perhaps not that critical, but a challenge presented from a customer, that curveball maybe they weren't aware of. And then how did JCI seize the opportunity to overcome that challenge and deliver for the customer? Do you have an example or two you might want to share with us?
Yeah. So, being on the Commend podcast, I'll go ahead and use a Commend example where working with a large university in Philadelphia had a massive access control system. And one of the challenges they were running into is they were keeping their buildings unlocked, and they wanted to lock their doors down from a perimeter perspective so that the students could still move in and out freely. If one of them forgot their badges, they needed a way for them to be able to call in and say, hey, I forgot my badge. This is who I am, and this is who I'm going to see. So we looked at a couple different IP intercom solutions, and kind of came back to Commend,
Hmm.
and said, hey, look, this is what we want to do. We worked with the development team out there, and did an initial proof of concept. And we've since taken that POC to an enterprise level across the entire university platform. So it's enabled us to say, hey, if you can't get in this building, we lock the doors down. The first call is going to ring into an interior receptionist desk. If it doesn't answer there, it'll ring into one of the offices that's fully staffed all the time. If at some point somebody doesn't answer that call, it'll then roll over to a monitoring station that's operated 24/7. But it's enabled the university to provide an additional sense of safety and security for those students, because their doors are not open. That you do need to have some level of access control or proof of who you are to get inside those facilities, and at the end of the day, protect the student body, which is their main job for public safety.
Yeah, that's a fantastic example of how the product can be as flexible as the customer needs it to be. Any others you'd like to spotlight?
And I think just based off of the success that we had with the initial pilot with the university, we were able to transition that into the entire healthcare system that they also work with, and expanded that that footprint across 6 major hospitals inside the city to where they can use intercoms from trying to get into a loading dock to use a nurse calling in from an actual OR, hitting the phone and saying, hey, we need additional folks in here or whatever the case
Hmm.
may be. But they've expanded that IP intercom capability to just more than letting somebody through a door. It's communication back and forth between rooms, kind of help moving the staff along, keeping people where they need to be, and help mitigate spots where I don't need to have somebody sitting here if I have somebody someplace else that can that fill that role for us. So the hospital kind of engaged that, and we've been using that ever since.
It's an interesting perspective, especially in the healthcare industry. We have discussed on this podcast before how, especially in the healthcare industry, with the experiences from COVID, a lot of integrators are seeing an uptick in hospitals trying to do unmanned or remote stations, or in some cases, even I wouldn't say robots or drones, that sort of thing, to do check ins on rooms and sort of look to the future of not necessarily needing as many physical bodies in a space, or as a preventative measure from potential spread of airborne diseases.
Exactly. Yeah. Especially when you're looking at, just the traditional touch points or contact points. If you can have, a number of FTEs that are doing all of this, or if you can put, a single desk in place with one FTE that can cover the same thing that a rover would do, you can start to utilize your budgets or, your personnel for other areas that are more important. So it can be a budget saver and a better return on the investment. Really helps some of these facilities hit their financial goals for the year.
Yeah, absolutely. And not to mention their financial goals, but also find the solutions that will work within those budgetary numbers. Hospitals, just like any other large industry, are going to have certain constraints they put on their technology budgets or capital expenses when it comes to hardware improvements. So it's nice to be able to find those solutions.
Definitely.
I want to ask you about what JCI's focus is, or how you focus when it comes to cybersecurity.
So we have a ton of different applications depending on what you want to look at. Is it server security? Is it edge solutions? Am I putting something on an edge device? I think there's a lot of focus on that right now because nobody wants to have their security product be the piece that was the entry point. So there's not a lot of traditionally there hasn't been a lot of edge monitoring. So I think there's a lot of focus that's going into that department. Preventive health maintenance is, hey, your camera's out of, you know, your password is the default password. Systems that can monitor all your security devices, so it's not, it takes out some of the human error that can occur. So I think you're going to see a lot of that move towards edge security, and I think that's where a lot of effort's going to be placed with it. That's where we're looking at doing it because that's at the end of the day, that's the easiest entry point. So protection from the outside in. So start at the edge and work your way back.
Yep, couldn't agree more. Okay. So if I were to ask you um, to look down the road when it comes to the industry itself and sort of where you see things moving, what's the 5-year look down when it comes to JCI, or from your purchase area sales manager?
I think one of the biggest pieces kind of moving forward, COVID did, I think a ton of damage to almost every industry that's out there. So when you start looking at people not being in the office, the personal interactions with people, I think we're going to start to see a lot more people getting back to the office. That day to day physical interaction, I think we're going to start to see, how that helps facilitate business getting done. Um, I think you can always do much better meeting face to face with somebody than you can via Teams or Zoom or any of these other platforms that are out there. You just can't read body language, and you just don't get a true sense for how things are happening. So I think we're going to start to see a movement back towards a lot of face to face meetings, people returning to offices, and a lot more collaboration. I think happens in that regard.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that there is something to be said for being in person, even though we're recording this remotely. There's a big advantage to being able to be in the room with the people and get to know and build those relationships like we did before.
at the end of the day, people buy from people, and they buy from people they trust. And it's just the closer you can maintain that relationship, somebody you have a better understanding, you might pick up, hey, we're also worried about this, something you might not pick up on a Teams meeting per se, but when you're face to face, you seem to get a lot more energy out of a meeting, and you also get a lot more reality from the different folks, and it gives you a chance to talk with them one-offs. Hey, what else is going on? How's the wife? How's the kids?
Mm.
Things you don't necessarily want to bring somebody down in a meeting with, but they're more apt to talk. A lot of people have a lot of things in common. They're sharing, similar experiences. So if you can get that information out to each other, especially in today's day and age, let somebody know they're not alone. Life is hard, work is hard. It's not, you're not on an island by yourself. So
Yep.
I think when you can get to work with other people and, have that touch point, I think it does a lot for the overall morale of any company.
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree. Okay. Well, I appreciate your time, Aaron. That's all the questions I have for you. I appreciate you giving us the opportunity to talk to you. And we had a great time having you on the Command Journey podcast.
I appreciate it, Michael. Thank you very much.
Thank you.